Here we go.
Hello guys, I'm Comic Book Movie Film Productions, and welcome back to the DC Film Retrospective. Today's film is the first live-action adaptation of one of the most praised comic books in history, Watchmen. The film was in development for over 2 decades, well before it hit the silver screen, with tons of directors throughout Hollywood getting hired for the project like Terry Gilliam, Darren Aronofsky, and others who left the project due to it being unfilmable. At one point it was supposed to be a miniseries, but that would be a while before that got off the ground. Back to the film, after having so many development issues, Warner Bros. Hired Zack Snyder, who at the time had only done the Dawn of the Dead remake and at the time just made 300, and that was a smash hit, praised for his visual style, considering he basically brought the comic book to the screen and he did the same thing with this film, not wanting to change anything about the comic and using it as a storyboard, while also making the cast read it on set as well. And after getting the cast and budget as low as they could for this story, the film was mainly released in theaters in March 2009, where it got polarizing responses from both critics and audiences alike, and the film underperformed heavily at the box office. Despite there were multiple cuts of the film being released afterwards, there was no further development of any Watchmen adaptation until this year, where a Watchmen series is getting launched in about a week on HBO at the time of this recording. But anyways, with the history out of the way, let's get into the plot. The film is set in an alternative 1985, where superheroes exist, Nixon is still president on his third term, and the US and Russia are heading towards a nuclear war, World War III. Mainly due to Dr. Manhattan, played by Billy Crudup, a scientist who, after getting stuck in a science experiment, alters his entire body, turning him blue, able to control things on an atomic level, see through time, teleport, and so much more. Because he's on the side of the States and helped them win the Vietnam War, the rest of the world feels threatened by him, hence why the world is at odds with Nixon banning superheroes, who in this world have existed since the 40s. The first superhero team that existed was called the Minutemen, a group of people inspired by comic books to go out and fight, but over the years many of the members got killed or just retired. A few decades later, a new team of superheroes decided to form a new superhero team called the Watchmen, consisting of 6 members. A violent detective who wears a Rorschach mask that constantly changes its shape. Dan Dryberg, aka Night Owl, played by Patrick Wilson, who took up the mantle after the previous one retired along with Silk Spectre, aka Lord Jupiter, played by Malin Akhamar, after her mom Sally Jupiter, played by Carl Gugino, retired. Then there's the comedian played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, a violent vigilante who is very sarcastic and does whatever he wants, including sexually assaulting Sally Jupiter at one point. Then there's Ozymandias, played by Matthew Good, and Dr. Manhattan. They worked together for a few years, but most of them retired or did other things. Dr. Manhattan is working with Nixon and the US government to stop the nuclear warfare, so he focuses on his craft. Rorschach is still working on as a detective, and Ozymandias is basking in his wealth, due to revealing his identity, Adrian Veidt, and making money off his merchandise. Then the comedian is murdered one night in his apartment by a mysterious assassin, leading Rorschach to go on an investigation to see who killed him. Meanwhile, Laurie and Manhattan hooked up. But now she is frustrated at him focusing on all his time on his machine and not caring for humanity anymore. So she starts to hang out with Dan as the two sleep together and decide to put back on their costumes and go crime fighting. Rorschach also joins along so they can find who's been killing people linked to them, because he believes the killer is trying to kill the supers, because he killed a supervillain and later the first Night Owl. We also get flashbacks throughout the film that shows the Watchmen in their prime along with their backstories. Dr. Manhattan knows destruction is imminent, so he shows up to Night Owl's base and takes Laurie to Mars, where he built a strange clock, and says that she's the only link to his caring for humanity, and shows her what he sees, which is her darkest memories, including the twist that the comedian is actually Laurie's father. She begs him to save the world as Rorschach and Night Owl go to a base in the Arctic, where it's revealed that Ozymandias is the one who killed the comedian and the other folks, along with trapping Rorschach in a building, causing his identity to be revealed as Walter Kovacs, and got sent to prison before a riot breaks out, giving him the opportunity to escape with Night Owl and Silk Spectre, because they figured out his plan too early. His plan is to blow up multiple big cities across the world, making it look like Manhattan was the cause, so the Americans and Soviets set aside their differences and have world peace instead of nuclear war. He ends up executing the plan after Night Owl and Rorschach can't beat him as Manhattan and Laurie arrive. Night Owl beats up Ozymandias, but everyone realizes he was right and agrees to keep his plan a secret, for the sake of the world, except for Rorschach, who just wants peace based on a lie. So Manhattan kills him and teleports away from Earth. As it ends with the world at peace, Laurie and Dan living happily together, Ozymandias still being alive in his base, and everything seems to be fine until one news publisher comes across Rorschach's journal he writes in throughout the film a voiceover, possibly exposing the secret as credits roll. The film looks great. The film has a distinct style to it, and there are many vivid images that will stick with you long after the credits roll, and it's one of the better looking comic book films I've seen in recent years. It does feel like a comic jumping onto the screen. The acting is solid all around. Everybody makes their character stand out, from Jekyll or Haley's gritty Rorschach, Patrick Wilson's goofy but heroic Night Owl, Billy Crudup's somber performance of Dr. Manhattan, and so much more. The visuals alone are the best aspects of the film along with the effects. which still look good today. The film has a good soundtrack, some very interesting subplots like Dan and Lori returning to the tights, although it definitely gives off the Incredibles vibes, especially the burning building scene. The second act easily brings the film up with Rorschach and his plot, especially when he goes to prison. The film has a lot of passion put into it and you can see the effort on screen. And for a 3-hour long movie, which I did watch the director's cut for this review, it doesn't drag as much as I thought it would, and overall it's entertaining in parts. This film is definitely frustrating to talk about because on the one hand, you can tell as much effort is put into this movie, but it has so many problems. I think it was a mistake to adapt this faithfully. One of the best decisions so far from the series, from what I've seen in the trailers, is that series is doing its own thing while also being faithful to the source material. This film just tries to emulate the comic book beat by beat, and it shows for how convoluted the film is. First off, I never really get invested in this team, mainly because we don't really know who they are and how they work together. Sure, we get glimpses and flashbacks, but not enough to fully understand these relationships, and when certain characters turn, I didn't find myself that invested. It's like watching Logan without any other previous X-Men films existing. It kind of removes the bedrock of the X-Men history. Despite that film being standalone mostly, we were already invested in those characters. The film also does a poor job at delivering information too. A lot of the film's themes feel outdated, mainly because they are themes that were relevant in the 80s. When the comic was written, mainly about the Cold War and stuff like that. But for an audience in the late 2000s, it doesn't really carry the same importance. It's not like Apocalypse Now or Platoon where the themes of war are still relevant today. This is very much an 80s comic. The film feels scrambled together with how many flashbacks there are, and how much they are forced in that don't add much to the characters and feels awkward. The slow-mo scenes, although are cool at first with the community being thrown out the window, eventually Snyder's style gets quite distracting and makes the film feel style over substance. It thinks that every audience member watching the film knows the comic front and back, and that's unfair when you're adapting a comic. Not everyone's gonna understand what you're trying to do and definitely has to lack of its own vision, being in the shadow of Alan Moore. Also, the film can get boring at points. It doesn't drag per se, but all the men has have bored me after the initial scene introducing him in its origin flashback, because the character is very one note and I didn't care about him or Lori's relationship. I was way more invested in her and Dan along with Rorschach, who has some great lines, but some lines feel like an edgy teenager wrote the script, and his voice is definitely reminiscent of Christian Bale's Batman, along with the whole tone of the film. It rips out quite a bit and it's annoying. I didn't suffer while watching this movie, but it could have been so much better if it wasn't being so faithful. Overall, Watchmen is okay. The positives and negatives ran out enough to where the positives are slightly higher than the negatives. It has great visuals, production design, effects, all that jazz. All of the cast all being strong, the soundtrack working, the film's pace being decent, and the world peace theme actually was handled quite well, especially with the ending. You can tell Snyder really cared for this property, but he followed it too closely, making the film's themes feel outdated. The lack of context for the characters doesn't really make you invested. It rips out the comic as well as other properties to where it doesn't feel like Snyder's movie. Certain characters' plotlines weren't really investing, and overall the film feels meshed together and not really coherent. But when push comes to shove, I had a decent time with it, and it was better than watching it the second time around, especially with the director's cut. Overall, it's serviceable, but it could have been so much better. I give Watchmen a C+, a 6.5 out of 10, and a streaming recommendation. So that's Watchmen. What do you guys think about it? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and please don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. I'm Combo Movie Film Productions, and this isn't the last DC film review because justice needs to be served.